Hey everyone, how's it going? This is Azren, the language nerd here. I'm the owner of the Calgary Language Nerds, and welcome to today's video. The title of this video is Kickstart Your Fluency in 2022. I'm excited to be making this video, and I think it's going to help a lot of you. In case you don't know who I am, and this is the first time you are coming across me, I'll briefly introduce myself. As I said before, my name is Azren. People call me Azren, the language nerd online. I run a business called the Calgary Language Nerds. My team and I, we teach a wide variety of different languages to people of all ages and all degrees of fluency. And while we are based here in Calgary, which is a city in Canada, we do teach quite a few online classes, and we have students that live in all sorts of different countries. I love learning languages personally. I speak 5 languages as of right now. I speak English, French, Spanish, Mandarin, and Gujarati. I would like to learn at least an additional 3 languages in my lifetime. I would like to learn Russian, Arabic, and Hindi at a minimum. I'm also currently working on perfecting or sharpening or still continuing to improve my Mandarin and Gujarati, even though I speak them both reasonably well. That's my major language learning focus right now. I love teaching languages as well. I love it, love it, love it. Something that I've done for quite some time. And yeah, there's a brief introduction about me. If you want to read my full bio, you can go to azrenthelanguagenerd.com and you can read my bio on my website. You will see if you do that, my experience with language learning and teaching languages is quite extensive. I know my craft very well. So the table of contents here, we're going to talk about what is productivity and why does it matter? I'd like to share some free resources and exercises, and then I want to kick off the 250 challenge. If you follow my YouTube, you might have already come across this 250 challenge or my Instagram or other platforms, but I will still mention it in this video here. The primary focus of this video is productivity and talking about why it matters. Now, what is productivity? Productivity, in my eyes, can be broken into 2 separate components, one of which is time/effort. The other one is effectiveness, meaning when you're learning a language, on one hand, you have to make sure you are putting in enough time and effort to learning that language. Learning a language does take a certain amount of time and effort, and you have to make sure that the time and effort that you are dedicating is effective, meaning you are working quote unquote smart. A good example to demonstrate this is the other day I was speaking with a student of mine who was telling me that she practices Spanish every single day. And I thought to myself, wow, that's great. I didn't know she practiced every single day. So on the time/effort side of things, she's doing admirably. She does, roughly speaking, about 30 to 60 minutes a day. And I thought that's pretty darn good. I then asked her what she does with that time. How is she using that time? And she said that she listed off a variety of self-study resources that she uses. And the thing is that those self-study resources are far, far below her current level. So they're incredibly easy for her and they're not challenging at all. And therefore, even though she's doing a great job on the time/effort, she's doing a reasonably poor job in terms of effectiveness. She's not very effective with her time, even though she's putting in a decent amount of time. And this is common. Language learners, when I look back at last year in my business and also the interactions I had with, Lord, hundreds of language learners last year, if not more than hundreds, possibly in the thousands, most problems fall into one of these 2 categories. When people are struggling, either they're just not putting in enough time and effort, or I should say, sometimes people struggle on both fronts, or they're not very effective with the time and effort that they are dedicating. And so one of my big focuses for 2022 is to fix this, or rather do what I can to help language learners help resolve this problem. This might seem like a silly question or a question that maybe isn't worth asking, but I think it is. Why does productivity matter? Can't someone learn at their own pace? First of all, I think people should learn at their own pace. I don't think, in fact, that's probably the only way you could do it. So that's for sure. But why does productivity matter? There's a tangible reason as to why productivity matters, a tangible reason that is going to hit home for all of you, I think, when you're watching this. Let me explain it. The tangible reason has to do with the 6 levels of proficiency. I should change this word from fluency to proficiency, to be honest, but regardless. There are 6 levels of proficiency: A1, A2, B1, B2, C1, and C2. Some of you may have heard of these levels before. Some of you may not have. Some of you might be very familiar about what these mean. Let me explain briefly what they mean. You can read up in more detail if you would like to. This is how I think of these levels. These are terms I've come up with in terms of these: beginner, traveler, conversational, fluent, advanced, mastery. Those are my words, but you can read up about these levels in far more depth on Google, or even if you go to the Council of Europe website. This is done by the Council of Europe. If you go to their website, this is on their website. So A1 and A2 are the 2 beginner levels. B1 and B2 are the 2 intermediate levels. C1 and C2 are the 2 advanced levels. A B1 is a nice benchmark to aim for, because a B1 means you're quite conversational in another language. You can talk about anything day to day. You can talk about anything day to day, as long as it's not very technical or very academic or very professional. You can talk about it. A B2 goes a step beyond that. A B2 would mean that not only can you talk about things and converse about things that are day to day, but you can also talk about things that are more professional, more academic, more technical. You could talk, for instance, about politics or current events, economics. You could talk about the pandemic, since that's obviously a hot topic right now. You could talk about things that would require a much deeper vocabulary and a much more sophisticated way of expressing yourself. So this often, for many language learners, is where they're trying to get to at the end of the line. This often will be the end of the line for many language learners. C1 and C2 are incredibly advanced. These are very, very advanced levels, and you're not struggling much in the target language anymore once you're at these C1 or C2 levels. Again, I do encourage you, if you aren't very familiar with these levels, I do encourage you to Google CEFR levels explained. Search that, and there are lots and lots of websites that describe these levels in far more detail. And I do believe it's important to understand what these levels are, because it does go far beyond what the brief description I gave right now. So let's talk about the direct correlation, or rather the tangible reason as to why productivity matters. If you look at this page here, I want you to ignore, for the time being, oops, let's do a straighter line than that. Let's ignore these year and month figures, and let's just look at the number of hours for now. We're going to come back to these years and month figures. Okay. An A1 takes 100 on average for a teenager or adult. Achieving an A1 level of proficiency takes about 100 to 150 hours. An A2 takes 200 to 500 hours. A B1 takes 400 to 800 hours. A B1 takes 1,000 to, a B2. A B2 takes 1,000 to 1,800 hours. A C1 takes 2,000 to 4,000 hours. A C2 varies. There isn't an exact science behind how long it takes to achieve different levels of proficiency. It's not an exact science. So there are certain people who will learn a little bit faster, certain people who will learn a little bit slower than the hours I've listed on here. There are many factors that can influence these numbers. For instance, one major factor would be if you speak another language or other languages that are similar to the language you're learning. For instance, if you're learning Spanish and you already speak French and Italian, Spanish is probably going to come a lot faster, and you will learn it a lot faster than someone who doesn't speak French or Italian, for instance, because they're in the same language family. Another factor would be individual factors. Some people might just learn a little bit faster than others. There are so many other factors. One of them, a big one to think about when you look at these hour numbers, is mental fatigue. Someone might look at these numbers and say, okay, so 200 hours. Could I just do 10 hours of study a day over 20 days? Theoretically, yes, but mental fatigue is a factor to think about too. You might do 20 hours of, I'm sorry, 10 hours of practice or study in a day, but after 4 hours, you might just be pooped. You might be tired and you can't sustain that. You're not able to keep going. And therefore, even though you did 10 hours of practice or study, only 4 hours were productive. Going back to the topic of this video, only 4 hours were productive hours and the rest weren't very productive. Another major factor is the language. I'm sorry, I mentioned that already. The language you're learning will be a factor too. So these are not exact figures, but even though they're not exact figures, for the vast majority of language learners, irrespective of what language you're learning, irrespective of if you're 40 years old or 50 years old, 20 years old or 40 years old, 30 years old or 62 years old, irrespective of that, irrespective of other languages you speak, irrespective of your own DNA, your biology, irrespective, ignoring all of those, even taking into account all those factors, the vast majority of you are going to need, roughly speaking, these number of hours that I've listed on the screen in order to achieve, or rather reach, the different levels of proficiencies that I've listed on this screen. That's going to be the majority of you. The majority of you are going to fall into these numbers that I have put on the screen. So that's important to realize. So why does productivity matter? Going back to the initial question, the reason productivity matters is because most, maybe even all, but let's say most language learners, what they're doing is they're dedicating, let's say 2 hours a week toward learning a target language. And they're thinking that's pretty good. And heck, I'm not saying it isn't good, but they don't realize that if they're doing 2 hours a week, right? Let's write some numbers on the screen. You're doing 2 hours a week in a year. There are 52 weeks in the year. I know not everyone likes math. Some people do, some people don't, but let's go through this nice and slow. 2 hours a week times 52 weeks a year. You're looking at 104 hours per year. Okay. You're looking at approximately a minimum of 4 years to achieve a conversational level, or roughly, or on the higher end, perhaps almost 8 years. 100, let's say 100 hours to make the math easy. 100 hours times 100 hours a year times 4 years. You're looking at 4 to 8 years just to become conversational. I don't think most language learners are realizing that. They don't understand the link between the amount of time they're putting in on a day-by-day or week-by-week basis and how that directly and tangibly impacts how quickly they're progressing and what level they're trending towards, I suppose it might be the right word. They don't realize what level they're trending towards because of how much time they're putting in. And here's the other thing. Again, I want to go back to that slide about productivity. Please go back here. If you go back to this slide, and remember, it's not just the time and effort. So even if you are dedicating 2 hours a week, maybe your 2 hours a week isn't very effective. So even though you are doing 2 hours a week, if we go back here, and you're doing 100 hours a year, maybe you still don't get to an A1 because the 100 hours wasn't very effective. Are you following me? So that's why it's important. This is why it matters to think about productivity. You have to think about how much time you're dedicating. And you have to make sure that the time you're dedicating is dedicated in an effective manner, because if you don't, you'd never know what you're trending towards in terms of your degree of fluency or your degree of proficiency. Let's go a little bit further here. This is more of a fun fact. Again, for the time being, for one more slide, I want you just to ignore these numbers here. This is how long it takes on average for elementary age children. It's funny how a common myth that I often see is people think kids learn languages faster than adults when they don't. Or rather, to be specific, kids don't necessarily learn a foreign language faster than adults do. A lot of adults, when they think of kids learning faster than adults do, they're thinking typically of one of two things. They're thinking of kids who are learning their first language. They think of kids learning the first language and they think, wow, look how quickly they learned English or whatever the first language is. But first language acquisition and second language acquisition are extremely different. They're different circuits. They're different. The brain learns them differently. And, well, rather, or adults will often look at children who moved to another country and went to school in another language. And they're comparing the typical adult to a typical child who was going to school in Spanish, for instance. And the reason the child learned so quickly was not because kids learn faster than adults, but rather because they were going to school every day, 6-7 hours a day, immersed in Spanish, and talking with their friends and having no choice but to learn. If you take a typical adult and you take a typical child and you replicate that school sort of environment for an adult, the adult, generally speaking, is going to learn faster than the child will. The child will, generally speaking, the child will have a better pronunciation, generally speaking, than the adult will. But apart from that, adults do outpace children in all other aspects of language learning. So just a fun fact. Now, I told you to ignore these year figures. I told you to ignore the 1 to 2 years, 2 to 3 years. I told you to ignore those numbers. Now let's get to them. Those yearly figures are calculated based on somebody dedicating 250 hours a year toward their target language. That might sound like a lot. So to break it down a bit more, that's about 21 hours a month. 21 hours a month is about, let's call it 5 hours a week, roughly speaking, 4 or 5 hours a week. So it's a lot. It's definitely not zero. It's not 1 or 2. It is a good time commitment. But I've been comparing language learning to taking a single university course. Each language you try and learn, if you want to make rapid progress or efficient progress even, you have to treat it like taking one university course. If you went to university or college, think back, one class, you probably have 3 hours of class a week. And then you probably have at least 2 hours of homework a week, if not more, for the one class. So you probably are dedicating 5, 6, 7, 8 hours a week for one course. And I think language learning, if you want to make some real, meaningful, rapid, efficient progress for the average Joe, for most people, you do have to treat it as seriously as you would taking a university course. Now, you don't have to take classes when learning a language. That's not mandatory. There are other ways to go about learning a language, of course. But the time commitment and the level of seriousness that you treat it with, I think, has to be, reasonably speaking, comparable. Again, if you want to make rapid progress, efficient progress. Otherwise, you will inch forward, and that's wonderful, as long as you are aware that you're inching forward and that's what you're doing. If you're okay with that, that's wonderful. That's great. I'm doing that for Blackfoot. Blackfoot is an Indigenous language. I'm doing that for Blackfoot right now. I'm inching forward. I do about 1 hour a week. It's going to take me forever to make for me to become fluent, like really, really fluent, like a B2 level, let's call it, will be a long process at 1 hour a week. But that's what I can fit right now. And that's okay. I'm okay with that. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm doing that myself. So, but I'm aware of the consequences, or the consequences sound so negative, but I'm aware of I hope you know what I mean. I'm aware of the consequences of my actions, and I don't mean that in a negative sense. So some free resources and exercises. I'll give you a few. I'll make it as broad languaged as possible. That's a weird wording. The resources I've listed here will work for a pretty wide variety of languages. When you're learning a language, you should be doing speaking, listening, reading, writing, and grammar. These are the 5 things you should be focusing your time on a regular basis. And I know a lot of you watching this, not all of you, but a lot of you watching this are going to be people that are coming from my drop-in classes on Duolingo events or things of that nature. And so I know from when I've talked to you that the vast majority of you, or many of you at a minimum, are really only using Duolingo. That's sort of all you're doing. And Duolingo falls into, well, to be honest, not exactly into any of these categories, to be honest with you. Duolingo falls into a 6th category. I call it, in my head, I haven't even put it on here because I don't think it's the most important per se. It can be, but let's say in my eyes, it's not as important. But regardless, it goes into a 6th category, which I sort of call other, I call it apps and other resources in my mind, or other apps and resources. These are the bread and butter. This is the major things you should be working on. So speaking, a few resources I like are HelloTalk. It's an application, mobile app. Duolingo events. It's a great platform to get some speaking. A great platform to get some speaking practice. Meetup as well. Meetup is quite similar to Duolingo events. The difference is that Meetup is not language specific. It's essentially a free app and website to meet people who have similar interests as you. It's kind of like a club's website. You can join a hiking club or a gaming club or a board game club or language club, Spanish, and you can often find groups on Meetup online and in person to practice languages with. So these are great resources for speaking. Listening and reading, one that I like a lot, and it works for a wide variety of languages, is Link, Lingq. It's a free app. They have a premium upgrade that's optional, of course, but Link is a great app for listening and reading for all levels, mind you. Writing, I'm a big fan of writing journal entries. So actual journal entries as if you had a diary or something like that. And then using the italki community tab to get feedback on your writing. You need to get feedback on your writing. It's not just writing journals and that's it. You need someone to correct it, tell you your mistakes, tell you why they're wrong, help you fix it, help you sound more natural. I'll show you momentarily what this italki community is. In fact, let me show you right now. Let me just stop my screen share for a sec, and I'll reshare it in like 7 seconds. Let's go to italki.com. italki is mostly known for tutors, having online tutors, but there's a really useful community section to it, which I'll show you right now. Okay, so here we are. So this is italki.com. I clicked on the community tab. You click on questions, and then you can click on ask. And you simply type your journal article or whatever your journal entry, your diary entry, whatever you want to call it. You write it in here and you ask someone to correct it, and someone will correct it for you. So you can probably find someone over here. Here's an example. Someone has said, are my answers correct? Facing waves up, facing waves of up, facing waves of up. Oh, I actually don't really understand this question. Let's find another one. Here we go. Does where are you from is a much better phrase than what is your country? Why? So this person wants to know if you should say where are you from or what is your country? And look, 4 people have responded to his question. So you can actually post little journal articles or something and people will correct them for you. And it's free, which is really, really cool. So that's an awesome, very effective, very useful resource that I would highly recommend to improve your writing. Let me share that my screen again on the share my screen on that presentation. Okay, here we go. Okay. You don't have to use the italki community. If you have a tutor or you already know someone, you can ask them and they can correct your writing for you. And lastly, the grammar. So grammar, there are plenty of resources for different languages. My favorite one is YouTube. I call them YouTube quote unquote courses. Let me again, sorry, I'm going to switch the tab. Oops, I'm going to switch the tab that I'm sharing here. I'll show you what I mean by free YouTube courses. So let's say you're learning French, okay? So let's say you're a beginner in French. What you do is you search beginner, you search your CEFR level. So beginner A1 or A2 or B1 or B2, whatever the level is. Let's go A1 French course. You search that. You switch the filter to playlist. And for a wide variety of languages, you're going to find these playlists that are essentially organized as courses. So learn French with Alexa, French Essentials course. You can do it for a lot of languages. Let's go to like Japanese has the JLPT. So you can go JLPT N1. Actually, N1's pretty advanced. Let's see. I wonder if there will be an N1. Look at that. JLPT N1 vocabulary, N1 grammar. Look at that. N1 vocabulary. So these are like little mini courses. Mandarin's got a lot. If you go like HSK is the Mandarin scale that they use, HSK1 course. Go to playlists. Boom, there you go. Right? So you're gonna find a lot in there. So I do like these YouTube courses. Sometimes for some languages, you won't be able to find a lot, but for a lot of widely learned languages, you will find a number of resources for grammar. If not, you're a Google search away from finding the grammar resources you want, again, for most widely spoken or widely learned languages. So these are some free resources. So when you're thinking about, when you're looking at, okay, you're like, I need to figure out more time. If you're thinking to yourself, okay, I need to figure out how to put more time in and be more effective. Well, I've demonstrated, hopefully demonstrated clearly why the time side matters, how much time leads to what kind of results. Hopefully, these give you a little bit of an idea of how to spend your time effectively. Right? Hopefully that helps on the effectiveness side. And now I get to talk about the thing that I'm most excited about, which is a 250-hour challenge. Ooh, I'm very excited about this. The 250-hour challenge is this. Dedicate 21 hours a month, that's about 5 hours a week, of active practice / study toward your target language. You can expect to progress by 0.5 to 2 CEFR levels in a year. That's pretty good progress. Depends on what your level is right now, depends on the person, but generally speaking, for most of you, this is how much you will progress. And that's some meaningful progress. Let me just tell you, that is very meaningful progress. There are 3 things you will need for this challenge. You will need a habit tracker, you will need a vocabulary tracker, and you will need some resources for reading, writing, grammar, speaking, and listening. Okay. A habit tracker is something that you can use to track how much time you've dedicated toward your target language. So you can do it pretty simply. You can use a piece of paper. You can create one in Microsoft Excel or in Word. You can use whatever you want. Everyone has their own sort of systems for tracking their habits and how much time they dedicate to something. You can use something like that. You want to make sure you separate out, though, how much time you put towards speaking, listening, reading, writing, grammar or theory focused things. And lastly, it'll just be like an other section. So you want 6 categories for sure. You'll need a vocabulary tracker. So a vocabulary tracker is somewhere to write down all the new words and phrases you're learning. And lastly, you'll need different resources, again, for reading, writing, grammar, speaking, and listening. Okay. I'll show you the following. I have some documents that I personally am using, actually. So I use this tracker here for my study hours. I'll actually show you mine. I've been using it for Mandarin. I'll show it to you in a moment. You can use this. I'll put a link to where you can get this in the YouTube video description below. I'll put a link. You can use these guides here for resources and exercises. I've made 6 so far. So Spanish, French, Mandarin, German, Russian, Japanese. Depending on when you're watching this video, there might be more that I've posted. If you want a guide for a language that I have not made a guide for, simply send me a message. I'll put my Instagram and my email. I'll put different contact methods in the YouTube description box below as well, in the video description box. But these guides will be really useful for different resources and exercises. The speaking exercises, speaking resources, reading, writing, listening, everything you would need is in these guides. So you can go and grab these from my website. And yeah, so those can also be helpful for you. So, and actually we're not quite at the conclusion, but I'll still wrap it up. It's definitely not easy to learn a language, but it is possible. You can be there if you're just making sure you're putting in the time and making sure that you are effective. You're using your time effectively. That's important. Let me show you here the trackers that I've made. Let me show this to you before we finish. So I have this guy here. This is what I use. I'm using scrap paper, as you can see, the scrap paper, but hopefully you can still see it clearly enough. There we go. This guy here has like little boxes. Each box represents 30 minutes of study or practice. I've separated it out into different categories. So reading, writing, listening, speaking, right? I have a monthly version of this tracker. So I fill this one out every month. It's the same thing, basically. This one just looks far less overwhelming. This one might look more overwhelming because there's so many boxes. So I fill out this one per month and I transfer these over to this yearly tracker. So that way I can see this one get filled up in the yearly tracker and these ones get filled up quickly every month. I also have the following. I'll put links to these in the description box in case you want to use mine, of course. I will put them if you like the ones I made. I'll show you the vocab tracker I use. I really like it. I added a pretty nifty column that I think all vocab trackers should have. Even if you make your own vocab tracker, you should add this, I think. Check this out. This is what I have here. So again, hard to see because I'm using scrap paper. but this over here are my words in Mandarin on this column. This here is the English translation of what it means. And then I have these little columns over here. This one says, I don't know this word or phrase at all. This one says, I need more practice with this word or phrase. This one says, I know this word or phrase and can use it with ease. And this final column says, this word doesn't translate directly. So you can then like kind of check off which words you're like, wow, I really don't know that word. I really don't know it. You can check that off as you go. Final thing I'll say, then we'll wrap this up. It's like an FAQ. I get this a lot. I've been asked before, it's okay. I've been asked before, Azren, should I do every week? If I'm doing 5 hours of practice, should I do every week speaking, listening, reading, writing, grammar, and then other apps and strategies? Should I do all 6 every week? Is that how we should structure it? It's a great question. You can, there's nothing wrong with that. There's a variety of ways you can structure. You don't have to necessarily do an even amount of practice for every category every week. Not necessarily, it's not mandatory. One structure for you to consider, 2 ways to do it, okay? There's 2 possible structures. Structure 1, split it up reasonably evenly. Do like an hour of speaking, an hour of listening, an hour of reading, an hour of writing, split it up evenly. That'll work quite well. The other structure is what I'm personally doing right now. Now, this for Mandarin, I have a higher level in Mandarin, but it is what I'm doing. I do a lot of listening. Okay, I pull up a video that has subtitles. I listen. I pause when I don't understand. I look at the subtitles. I look up words I don't know. I write down all the words I don't know in my vocab tracker. I rewind. I re-listen. It takes me about an hour to do 3 or 4 minutes of video. So a 3 or 4 minute video would take me 1 hour to get through. I'm watching longer videos, so it takes me like 10 hours, like whatever, 10 hours or 8 hours to finish one video. I write down a lot of words, okay? Once I've gotten about 30 to 40 or 50 words, 30 to 50 words, what I then do is I will then do some writing practice. I'll write a journal entry, but I'll try to use as many of the new words that I've learned. That's a form of review, okay? Then once I finished a whole video that I've watched for 8 hours, for crying out loud, because it takes me forever to get through them because I'm trying to understand everything and looking up so many new words, and I know that video really well, I've re-listened to it, I know that video cold, I know all the new words, I feel really confident, then I book a speaking practice session with a tutor, a private tutor, and I'll tell the tutor, hey, I want to have a discussion based on this video. And I send the video that I spent the past 8 hours listening to and watching and analyzing and learning all the words to. Because then when we do the speaking practice, I can then use all these new words that I have been learning, right? And so that way I can get a lot of listening done, which feeds my vocabulary, feeds my listening comprehension. I get to do writing to practice those words. I write like a journal entry. I'll get it corrected by someone, of course. I'll have someone correct it. Then I get speaking practice about that video, using that vocabulary, helps me use it again, review it again. That's a nice structure for me. And then the grammar, I'm just looking at my little tracker here. On the grammar side of things and the reading side of things, I'll read about something that was on the same topic of the video that I watched. I'll read something, and again, I'll use the dictionary. It takes me time to get through it, but that way I get to get if I watched a video about whatever, shopping or something, right? I'll read something about shopping because then it's likely to have a lot of the same words. So it reinforces that vocabulary topic. And then grammar and theory, what I'll often do is when I'm doing the listening or the reading comprehension, often I'll see a sentence structure or a conjugation, or I'll see something that I didn't really understand. I'm like, where did that come from? Why is it written like that? And then I'll Google or YouTube or ask a tutor. I'll ask someone. I'll usually research or ask someone about that certain structure, and that then gives me the grammar of like, oh, there's a grammar gap that I didn't know about. So that's kind of how I cycle through that paper for the most part, and get through all the different categories. So 2 different approaches to how you can navigate those different practice activities. Okay, hope this is useful for you. I know it's a longer video, but hopefully it was useful. And yeah, I'll see you guys later. Bye-bye.